Ranking Member Cantwell for this important hearing. I know there's been a good discussion about spectrum. I had a judiciary hearing at the same time, but this is specifically important to our 911 systems. I co-chair the Next Gen 911 Caucus with Senator Budd, and we are dedicated to expanding and improving emergency communications infrastructure. Yet the FCC Spectrum Authority expired in March 2023, as we all know, for the first time in nearly 30 years. And I'm concerned about this lapse in Spectrum Authority with the increasing needs for emergency authority. An estimated 240 million calls are made to 911 centers annually. However, this critical public service relies on outdated technologies. I've led legislation with Senator Cortez Masto to modernize Americans' 911 system to help enable 911 call centers to better handle text messages, pictures, videos, and modern communications. Dr. Bayless, can you give an example of an innovation at your lab that could help make our 911 system stronger and more resilient?
So I think this depends on what types of interference the 911 systems are receiving. But an innovation that we're finding in our lab that could really be helpful, well, there's two of them. One is we've got reconfigurable circuitry that can reconfigure within under a millisecond. And that would allow us to actually change frequencies and then optimize our performance at a new frequency. What happens is your circuit's designed to operate at the old frequency. And so if you change frequencies, you may drain your battery because you don't have any efficiency. You may not get the transmit power you need. So that's an example of one thing we're doing is reconfigurable circuitry. And then I think that the dynamic spectrum management system innovations we're working on, as well as our in situ measurement capability, which would allow us to actually see when we're causing interference and change our transmissions and be able to plug AI in through that. Those would help 911 systems as well as any system that's trying to reconfigure. Thank you.
You know, just recently in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, many affected areas experienced local communications blackouts because the flooding was severe enough to override the internet providers' disaster contingency plans. How could we leverage innovation in spectrum management to ensure that our wireless broadband networks are more resilient when things happen like natural disasters?
I'm not aware of this particular, and didn't research this. I would have to go in and see exactly what the problem was in terms of the technical lapse and then try to be able to bring a team to solve it. If it was an interference issue or frequencies not being available, then I think our team has the solutions we could deal with it.
And getting this spectrum thing set would be helpful if we had more.
I think in the sense that technology is behind regulation right now, technology needs to be developed. And I think that's where our lapse is, really. I really believe that investment needs to be made in technology rather than just re-regulating and re-regulating because we're slicing the bread thinner and thinner and thinner until it crumbles.
Thank you. Mr. Pearl and Mr. Clark, during President Trump's first administration, there were interagency disputes regarding spectrum. We've seen these interagency disputes through Democratic administrations as well. Recognizing the importance of providing more order, the National Spectrum Strategy was released in November of 2023, and its implementation plan in March of 2024. Mr. Pearl, can you discuss why it's important to continue to improve planning and coordination? And then, Mr. Clark, how can this administration cultivate more agency buy-in to avoid the sorts of disputes that have arisen, especially when it comes to the Department of Defense? Mr. Pearl.
So you can't work out these issues on an engineering level unless you have the proper interagency coordination, and that has to come from the White House really demanding that the agencies work together and participate in a robust way and have the right engineers who are there to work out the problems and really mandate that they share information. That's something that we've run into in the past where an agency that wants to continue to use the spectrum isn't willing to play ball and share information so they can work together collaboratively. And then you need a really healthy interagency process where it starts at the lower levels and eventually escalates if you can't resolve problems. That's incredibly helpful because if you just have the White House weigh in without having all the information and having that refined skill set of issues that comes from the interagency process, then in some cases the right decisions don't get made.
Yeah, we're experiencing a little bit of that right now, but I'm not going to go there. Okay, Mr. Clark.
So it requires leadership, both in the White House, but also in the departments. My discussion with the leadership of the current, team in the Defense Department showed that they are very willing to engage in this interagency deliberation to figure out the best way to use the spectrum. And there's a lot of modeling and simulation tools that Dr. Bayless and others have that could help us to figure out what are the opportunities for sharing and even coexistence in adjacent spectra.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.